Hey y'all, welcome to Paige's Perspective, where I help you find your inner strength to cope with life. We recently had a comment on an episode that I really want to dig into. Someone said, as the spouse, I'm basically told to become an expert on their addiction, yet they do not have to become an expert on my trauma. Thank you to whoever left this, because it was an inspiration to create this episode. So it's true, and it shows the imbalance of the recovery world. Not only do they need to understand how they've harmed us, we need to understand how they've harmed us. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I did not know about addiction, and I didn't care to, because how I was being treated, how it was impacting me, that's what mattered. Learning about addiction may keep us from holding someone accountable and keep us stuck in a dangerous situation much longer than necessary. So the default narrative is telling spouses, go to Al-Anon, read the big book, understand the disease, understand their trauma, become educated on addiction, and maybe you'll see where they are coming from. And it basically teaches you to have more compassion, understand them, excuse them, and pretty much adapt to them. I don't think this is healthy for spouses who have been traumatized by their most intimate partner. Yes, traumatized. Sure. It's a strong word that's been thrown around a lot these days. However, that is what happens in these relationships. You can learn about the disease, the cravings, their trauma, but you're still left wondering why you feel how you feel and why your body is reacting the way it is. Learning about them doesn't help you. It still dismisses our experience and what we've gone through. It's still all about the other person. It reinforces the idea that their stuff is more important than ours. Their healing is more important than ours. And I'm here to challenge that and spread awareness that things need to change in the world of addiction and recovery. And I'm not saying we go all the way to the other side. Yes, there is a place to understand addiction. Seriously, I'm not saying that. I'm very gray area thinking here, but I'm saying we meet in the middle, and that we give spouses more of a voice. I know this isn't everyone's experience. You may have had a wonderful experience with your partner's rehab facility and they allowed you space. However, this isn't the norm. We work with a lot of people, and I see this way more than I feel we should. Family programs need an upgrade, just like AA needs an upgrade. But anyway, let's discuss the overlooked side of things. Your trauma, your experience, how you feel, how their choices have impacted you. Living in these situations rewires your system. When you've been lied to, manipulated, neglected, unheard, constantly trying to guess what's true, your body literally learns to stay on high alert. Your nervous system is trying to protect you. Hyper-vigilance, panic, self-doubt, mood swings, overanalyzing, the what-if spirals, some physical issues like sleep problems, digestive issues, muscle tension, fatigue, palpitations, the startle responses we have, when you hear a noise and you're just like, walking on eggshells, isolation, and so much more. There's so many more symptoms to this. These are trauma responses from living in an environment where you don't feel safe. These aren't character defects. So how does learning about their addiction help your trauma? It's not going to change the way your body reacts. And here's what sucks is that it isn't explained to us like this. So we end up blaming ourselves. We tell ourselves we're too sensitive, or we're overreacting, or we begin to believe that we're actually the problem, when in reality, this is your body telling you you need to make a change to be healthy and feel safe. You are not in a safe environment, and your body knows. So think about it this way. You touch a hot stove and your hand blisters. Living in a home where addiction is present is like touching the hot stove over and over. Your nervous system carries burns and scars that don't heal just because the addict says they're sorry, or even because they get sober. Without education about trauma, you start to internalize damaging stories about yourself. You might say things like, I'm just broken, or I can't trust myself. If I were stronger, this wouldn't bother me. Why can't I just get over it? But the truth is, you're not broken. You're injured, and injuries require care, which means learning more about you and what you're going through than learning about why they do what they do. Okay, so I've been trying to articulate this in a way that makes sense, and I may have it, but bear with me. I may not have it, but we're gonna roll with it. I've said behind closed doors that imagine if the addicted partner learned about PTSD, betrayal trauma, and what their choices have done to their partner and even their kids. I'm not talking about the trauma they had when they were kids. I'm talking about the things that they have caused. Sure, recovery programs encourage making amends, but sometimes at surface level, and many times they truly do not understand how their actions have impacted other people. I think they need to understand what we actually go through, why we become hypervigilant, why we snap, why we can't open up. They need to understand that their actions have consequences and they harm people. We're so quick to feel sorry for them. But again, what about us? We're supposed to learn about their dopamine pathways, their trauma from childhood, yet they don't understand what lying actually does to another person, especially your life partner. They don't realize how their manipulative ways make us question our own reality. Maybe, just maybe, if they were somewhat educated on how we become traumatized by their actions, they may have somewhat of a conscience to make important changes. But let's be real. I know that some of us have tried to explain these to those in active addiction or hell, even recovery, and it doesn't matter. But those who are really working a program need to know how their actions affect others. So what happens when we ignore the trauma? First of all, it doesn't just disappear when someone gets sober. We've said this many times. This was my experience. My trauma didn't show up until 4 years after he got sober. And if that trauma is not addressed, it's going to linger. It's going to shape how you feel. It's going to shape how you think and even how you live. A lot of the times we will stay in long-term hypervigilance even when recovery is going well. You may find yourself still checking their phone, scanning their behavior, or waiting for the other shoe to drop. Your body doesn't trust safety because it hasn't been taught that safety is real yet. And then the physical toll is real. Trauma keeps the stress response stuck in overdrive. The emotional toll runs just as deep. Many spouses say that they never feel safe in intimacy again. They just can't relax. They can't let their guard down, even when their partner is sober. Because, trust feels impossible because the body remembers what the mind wants to forget. Again, it takes 1 to 2 years of consistent changed behaviors from someone who has harmed us to feel safe again. And I would argue even longer. Your body isn't going to just let it go. They have a huge part in rebuilding that trust, which means understanding you and your trauma from them. They need to really understand betrayal trauma. We pour so much energy into addiction education, but the spouse's trauma education gets skipped. Instead of focusing on the addiction, the substance, the other person, try to learn about betrayal trauma. Study what you're experiencing. Learn from other spouses and partners. See a trauma therapist. And if you're the addict, I believe that you should be required to study how your actions have impacted your partner. Betrayal trauma is real, and I'm not referring to cheating. There's financial betrayal, which could be secret debt, gambling, draining of your accounts, hiding purchases, hiding addictions, putting your family at risk with risky behavior, using money for substances or other habits while neglecting your family needs. There's emotional neglect and abandonment, which is repeatedly dismissing someone's feelings and then choosing addiction over the relationship consistently. That does something to another person. Broken promises and repeated relapse, swearing you'll quit or change, then returning to the same destructive behavior. Promising to attend treatment, to get help, go to therapy, support groups, but never following through. Saying that this time is different, but proving otherwise over and over again. This harms other people. There's safety betrayal, driving under the influence with you or the children in the car. Creating unstable or unsafe home environments. This is violence, yelling, threats. Bringing strangers, substances, or dangerous situations into your home. That was part of my story. A lot of these were part of our story that really impacted me later on down the line. This is a lifelong issue. Social and relational betrayal, embarrassing you publicly through intoxication or outbursts, isolating your spouse from family and friends, or family or friends and friends. Oh my gosh. Or damaging your reputation with lies, like damaging your spouse's reputation with lies, betraying confidentiality by sharing personal details or secrets. There's also spiritual or values betrayal, acting against deeply held family or spiritual values, violence, exploitation, abuse, using faith, therapy, or recovery language as a cover for continued harmful behavior, claiming change or growth while continuing to exploit trust. All of these actions harm others. They question their reality. They lose their spark. They lose their ability to trust anyone. It really affects them for the rest of their lives. It needs to be taken seriously. We need to be more direct about this and how actions can make a lifetime impact on another person. We are aware that you have struggles, but so do we. It isn't an excuse to treat people poorly, and it isn't an excuse to not seek help. So I have some reflective questions for the spouses and partners. Do you know more about your partner's addiction than you do about your own trauma caused by the addict? What would it look like if you gave yourself permission to study your healing with the same energy you've put into studying their recovery or their addiction? You've been expected to be an expert in their addiction. Now it's time to become an expert in your own healing. And if they truly want recovery, they'll become an expert in your trauma that they caused too. So our program, Independently Strong, helps you understand what you are going through and how to build yourself up to make decisions that align with your values. Remember, the trauma may not have been our fault, but it is our responsibility to heal from it. It's our responsibility to learn from it and make changes so we don't pour our own trauma onto others. With our program, you get weekly support calls with the others who have been affected by an addict or alcoholic in their most intimate relationships, and you can currently get 75% off using code Wheelie75. Check out tufo.com, that's TWFO.com, or independentlystrong.com for more info. Also, if you'd like to support the show, we set up a Buy Me a Coffee link. It's in the show notes. We set this up because we've been asked by many people who how they can support us without having to snag the program. So thank you to our listeners and supporters. We will continue spreading messages for as long as possible, and said from the beginning that if we helped change one life, it's all worth it. But one more thing before I head out. Our content isn't meant to be weaponized against anyone. It is meant for educational purposes, so you can help feel validated and empowered to live your life authentically. Shoving it in someone's face isn't helpful. What's helpful is taking the information and taking action yourself. Now, I do know that couples listen to us together, and it's a great way to have a mediator for your conversations, so that you have perspectives from both sides and you can have conversations over it. But if you're sending this to people, you have to let go of the outcome and the expectations of what they're going to take with that information. Sending them something and saying, hey, I thought this was informative. I'd love for you to take a listen, and then let go of whatever it is that they're going to do. But if you're sending it to them and saying, hey, look, this is what you're doing, you need to do better, it's weaponizing our content. It's meant to be educational. It's meant to empower you. So I just encourage you to utilize it that way. So that's all I have for this week. Until next time, I'm Paige. Bye.